Hello and welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Brandon Rittiman. I'd give you that usual line about what a newsy week it's been, but that's been kind of the norm of late. The president had his big trip overseas. Congress finally got the budget score on that health care bill passed out of the House. And the newest member of the House has himself a court date, accused of physically assaulting a reporter the night before a special election. Here to take questions on all of it, a man who's always had peaceful interactions with us when he's been in the chair, Republican Congressman Mike Coffman, who represents Aurora and surrounding areas. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just rip that off like a Band-Aid and start with your newest colleague, Greg Gianforte of Montana. The night before he won the election, he was cited with misdemeanor assault for allegedly body slamming a reporter. If it was up to you, would he be coming to Congress at all after that?
You know, I think Montana is going to have to figure out what to do with him. Mm-hmm. I think that, he won the election. My guess is he's going to be charged with assault, and that will go to trial. And he'll receive, some type of penalty if he's found guilty. I think the evidence is, and I think he did, in fact, apologize for it. He should have done it right. I think the mistake that he made, the mistake that he was doing in the first place. I can't believe that he, turned on that reporter. And then I think the fact is that he seemed to try to cover it up.
Should he face any political music when he gets to Congress, though? Some people have asked the question, like, whether he should be allowed to join the Republicans in caucusing, even.
Oh, no, I think he will. I think he's going to get lectured about his conduct. And I think people are going to be watching him very closely. Wow, I'm just surprised that he completely snapped like that, and it essentially, attacked or assaulted that reporter, and probably had it been done earlier, I think it would have cost him the race. We'll never know, obviously, what the full impact would have been, because a lot of people had already voted. Yeah, a lot of ballots were already
So you don't buy this theory that some people have that, like, this might actually have helped him in the race?
No, I don't think so. I hope not. I think that would be awful if it did.
So you were one of a handful of Republicans who voted no on the finalized version of the Health Care Act that passed out of the House earlier this month. Your explanation of why was all about people with pre-existing conditions. But there's more than that going on here. The CBO score came out. They say 14 million more people would go uninsured just next year and then build up from there if this became law, and that older people with lower incomes are going to pay higher premiums. Are either of those concerns to you?
There's certainly concerns, and I thought, clearly we have to get something. Something has to come out of the House to the Senate. I did meet with leadership beforehand and laid down a marker on this particular issue concerning pre-existing conditions in what was in the MacArthur Amendment. And so my hope is that the Senate, we still have a long ways to go with the legislation. The Senate, I think, will make big modifications of it. They'll reflect on the CBO score. Part of the CBO score I disagree with. When we talk about people losing insurance, they say losing insurance, it's people electing not to take insurance because of the individual mandate. I think he's absolutely right to bring up this issue, and the prior administration did not. And I think he should be commended for doing it.
Now, with the president coming back home, we can expect a little more attention back on that investigation into possible links between Russia and his campaign. Democrats have started to say they want something more. They want an independent commission or something like that. Are you satisfied that the special counsel and the congressional investigations, what we have right now, is sufficient, that it's going to get to the bottom of this?
Well, I think the most dangerous place in Washington to be is between a member of one of these investigative committees and a TV camera. It is so politicized. And so that's why I asked for an independent counsel, for a special prosecutor to be appointed. And I'm so glad that the Justice Department did appoint somebody who's highly respected by both sides. That's where the investigation needs to be. Do
you agree with Governor Hickenlooper's decision to pardon Renee Lima-Marin, and should ICE let him go?
Well, I think that there's some debate about whether it be a clemency or pardon. Green card holders who are here legally in the country who commit crimes can in fact be deported. And so there was a deportation order for him after he was sentenced. The governor has since pardoned him, and so I think that that's a question now for ICE. My guess is that he'll be able to remain in the country.
Do you want him to be able to remain in the country, given that the state has given him a pardon?
Oh, I think he should. I mean, I think in this instance, given the governor's decision, now we can debate whether or not he should have been pardoned, but the fact is he has been pardoned of the crime. My view legally is that deportation order should be nullified by virtue of the fact that his record is expunged.
But you just said we can debate whether the pardon was appropriate.
Well,
do you think the pardon was appropriate?
I think you had a question between pardon and clemency. Certainly I would have argued for clemency. But the government, you know, as the legislature passed a resolution supporting clemency.
Your district has a large immigrant population. You've gone so far as to learn Spanish in recent years. Many immigrants are on edge right now. They see ICE taking action against people who registered under the DACA program that was created by the previous administration. Sometimes folks who are here illegally but have no other criminal history to speak of. Are you concerned about the approach we've seen since the new administration has taken office, and how concerned should immigrants in your district be?
Well, I think they should be concerned. I think that, and I've talked to Secretary Kelly about these issues. I've introduced bipartisan legislation before this president was ever inaugurated. It's called the Bridge Act, and it seeks to take the executive order for DACA and make it into permanent law. Where the burden falls right now, I think, is not on this administration. This administration is enforcing the law. And when I talked to Secretary Kelly, questioning some of the things that the administration was doing, he said, look, we are following the law. You, in Congress, have a responsibility to change the law if you don't like the law. I do think we need to change the law. Here's what the administration is doing, and where I hope that what the outcome is from all this, is that they're making both sides uncomfortable in Washington, D.C. by enforcing the rule of law. Before, it wasn't enforced, or it was selectively enforced. And both sides could, you know, both sides were complacent, the left and the right. Now, I think neither side can be complacent with these laws being enforced, and I just hope that it does push Congress to act.
You're telling me you support what Trump is doing on immigration because it's lighting a fire?
It's the rule of law, yes, and he's lighting a fire for Congress to act, and that's the signal from the administration.
Congressman Coffman, thank you as always. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. This has been Balance of Power. Join us here on Sundays. Meet the Press is next with Chuck Todd.